Welcome, my dear guests, to the captivating expanses of my story. Chapter 16, 2214. On January 2, 2214, the EK Equinox approached the planet 34 Ceti I. Lieutenant Mariana Martin stood on the bridge and watched as the fascinating celestial body slowly materialized on the screens. What at first appeared to be an ordinary asteroid belt turned out to be a phenomenon of unimagined complexity. Sensors are detecting multiple anomalies in the debris field, reported the science officer at the scanner station. His voice vibrated with excitement. Mariana leaned over the console and studied the incoming data. Her eyes widened. "This is extraordinary," she murmured. The veil of debris surrounding the planet was anything but ordinary. The fragments moved in precise, almost hypnotic patterns. Mariana instructed, "Focus the long-range sensors on the outer edge of the field." The crew promptly obeyed, and new data streamed across the screens. The debris field stretched like a cosmic work of art around 34 Ceti I. Billions of particles, from microscopic to the size of small moons, danced in a complex ballet. Some appeared made of metals that could not be identified in the spectral analyses. "It looks like someone has smashed up an entire planet and artfully arranged the remains," the helmsman remarked reverently. Mariana nodded slowly. "Or as if an unimaginably advanced civilization had created something far beyond our comprehension." The EK Equinox drifted along the edge of the debris field, its sensors carefully scanning the bizarre constellation. The tension on the bridge was palpable. Every officer and every technician felt the significance of this moment in every fiber of their bodies. They were balancing on the threshold of a discovery that could shake the foundations of their understanding of the universe. Mariana Martin took a deep breath, her mind racing with the possibilities. "I strongly recommend launching a probe," she suggested, her voice vibrating with suppressed excitement. "We could analyze the composition of the particles, maybe even—" "Negative, Lieutenant," the fleet commander's voice thundered through the room. His hologram flickered into life on the bridge, an imposing figure of light and shadow. His face was as if chiseled from granite, his eyes cold and unyielding. "We have received precise orders to map this system superficially only. No deeper investigations. No exceptions." Mariana whirled around, her eyes widening in disbelief and burgeoning frustration. "But sir, with all due respect, this could be the most significant discovery since we've been exploring space. The scientific implications alone—" "That's a direct order, Lieutenant Martin," the commander cut her off. His voice was like a whiplash, leaving little room for discussion. The temperature on the bridge seemed to drop by several degrees. "Set course for the fourth planet immediately. We leave this sector in exactly 10 minutes. No delays." The words dropped like lead in Mariana's stomach. She took one last look at the displays, memorizing every detail. Her fingers flew over the console, stealthily securing as much data as possible. "Aye, sir," she replied stiffly. The bridge crew worked in tense silence as the EK Equinox moved away from the debris field. Mariana watched as 34 Ceti I grew smaller, an unsolved mystery. She clenched her fists. One day, she swore to herself that she would return. One day, she would unravel the secrets of this place. The EK Equinox accelerated, leaving the fascinating debris field behind. Ahead of them lay 34 Ceti IV, their next destination. But Mariana's thoughts remained with what they were leaving behind, with the countless unanswered questions and the feeling that they had just flown past something extraordinary. Lena Schultz stood in front of the vast viewing window of the Susquehanna, her gaze fixed on the shimmering planets of the Scifo system. Her fingers clutched a paintbrush while she held the color palette in her other hand. The ship hung motionless in space, trapped in bureaucratic limbo. The commander sighed softly. The dispute in the Senate had delayed clearance for the outpost, and now the crew was idle. Lena decided to use the unexpected free time to pursue her passion. With practiced strokes, she began to draw the contours of the nearest planet on the canvas. It was a gas world whose atmosphere shimmered in swirling bands of ochre and purple. Lena mixed the colors carefully to capture the subtle shades. Lena let her gaze wander over the other celestial bodies in the system as she painted. There was a small, rocky planet whose surface was littered with craters. Its rough texture challenged her, but Lena looked forward to capturing the rugged landscape with her brush. The only habitable world in the Scifo system, protected by an ancient shield system, was most fascinating. Vast moors dominated the continents, but the most striking feature was a mountain range visible from space that split a continent down the middle. Lena studied the shimmering atmosphere and the misty moorlands that stretched across the surface like a green-brown carpet. Lena called this world Ural, inspired by the striking mountain range that reminded her of the earthly landscape. She imagined what it would be like to explore this mysterious world that lay hidden behind its enigmatic shield. Further out, an ice giant circled, its pale, turquoise disk surrounded by delicate rings. Lena could hardly wait to capture the ethereal beauty of these distant worlds. She carefully mixed different shades of blue and green to reproduce the subtle shades of the gas giant and experimented with delicate brushstrokes for the fragile-looking rings. Hour after hour passed while Lena immersed herself in her work. The bridge crew occasionally gave her curious glances, but no one dared to disturb her. They all understood that their commander had found a way to deal with the frustrating situation. Their eyes reflected a mixture of respect for Lena's artistic talent and quiet admiration for her ability to remain productive even in moments of enforced standstill. Lena took a step back and looked critically at her work. The panorama of the Scifo system unfolded on the canvas, each planet a world of mystery and possibility. She had transformed the cold emptiness of space into something vivid and fascinating. Lena felt a hand on her shoulder as she applied the last brushstroke. She turned around and looked into the face of her first officer. "Commander," he said quietly, "we've received a message from the Senate." Lena Schultz nodded to her first officer, put down her brush and palette, and turned away from her newly completed painting. She straightened her shoulders with one last glance at the shimmering planets of the Scifo system outside the viewport. She followed him to the communications console, ready to receive the messages from the Senate. Lena Schultz stared at the flickering hologram of Myra Gupta. The senator looked exhausted, deep furrows dug into her face. "I'm sorry, Lena. You'll have to hold out. The situation in the Senate. Well, it remains tense." Lena suppressed a sigh. She had hoped to get the green light to build the outpost finally. Instead, the wait continued. "I see. How much longer, Myra?" The senator shrugged her shoulders helplessly. "It's hard to say. The tensions in the Senate aren't going to ease anytime soon. Each faction is pulling in a different direction." "And the Almorans?" asked Lena. She had been following the reports about the threat in the Empire's east. Myra's expression darkened. "No easing in sight. They're patrolling along our borders, provoking us. We can't spare a ship." Lena nodded grimly. The Empire's security came first. Still, the inaction gnawed at her. The ex-Susquehanna had been hovering in orbit around Scifo III for weeks now. The crew was getting restless, and boredom was spreading. "Is there anything we can do?" Lena asked. "More scans? Data analysis?" Myra shook her head. "Negative. Maintain your position. Impreatrix Sevia doesn't want to take any unnecessary risks." She paused, scrutinizing Lena insistently. "What's the mood on board?" Lena hesitated. She didn't want to worry Myra, but honesty was important. "Tense. The crew are frustrated and feel useless." "Understandable," Myra murmured. "Try to keep them happy. Organize simulations, competitions, whatever it takes." "Of course," Lena replied. She already had some ideas, maybe a chess tournament or an art exhibition with the crew's works. Myra looked relieved. "Good, I know it's not easy. But your presence in the Scifo system is important. We have to maintain our claim." Lena nodded. She understood the political implications. The Empire of Kasach could not show weakness, not now. "How are things looking in the other systems?" she asked. "Have Andrea or Rita made any progress?" Myra shook her head. "Nothing concrete. The EK Ptolemy is still exploring the Pluju system without any major discoveries. Rita is researching the Forerunner ruins on Ceti IV. Fascinating technology, but nothing usable yet." Lena suppressed her disappointment. She had hoped for good news, something that would lift her spirits. "I see," she finally said. "We'll hang in there, Myra. The ex-Susquehanna is standing by." The senator smiled gratefully. "I appreciate that, Lena. Hold the fort. I'll be in touch as soon as there's any news." The hologram flickered and went out. Lena stared momentarily at the space where Myra's image had just hovered. Then she straightened her shoulders and turned around. Outside, her crew waited, hungry for tasks and meaning. She would find a way to keep them busy and morale high, even if it meant mapping every square inch of Scifo III. Lena stepped out of her cabin. The long, curved corridor of the ex-Susquehanna stretched out before her. Crew members were bustling back and forth, but Lena could feel the tension in the air. She took a deep breath. It was time to gather her crew and explain the situation to them. It was not an easy task, but it was a necessary one. With a firm step, Lena made her way to the bridge. The ex-Susquehanna might be stuck in orbit, but their mission was far from over. They would remain vigilant, ready for the moment the Empire needed them. The Almorans in the Almor home system. On March 12, 2214, Impreatrix Almor sat on her crystalline throne in the Imperial Palace on Alsor. The mighty ruler of the Almoran Space Empire was celebrating her 193rd birthday that day. Her stone limbs rested heavily on the armrests as she pondered the future of her empire. The Imperatrix's advisors had advised her to expand the empire further west. Almor let her gaze wander over the imposing main hall, whose walls were adorned with elaborate stone carvings. Each relief told of the achievements and triumphs of her people. Lost in thought, Almor recalled the history of the Almorans. Their people had developed under the harsh conditions of the Almor home system. The trinary star system, with its 3 different stars, had shaped and hardened their species. Alsor, their homeworld, orbited around Almor Home A yellow dwarf star. Massive mountain ranges and deep canyons crisscrossed the planet's barren surface. In these barren landscapes, the Almorans had learned to survive and thrive. Almor remembered the stories about the natural predator that once threatened their ancestors. These creatures, half plant, half animal, had lurked in the depths of the canyons and fed on the mineral-rich bodies of the young Almorans. But their species had fought back. The Imperatrix proudly remembered how her ancestors had overcome this enemy through targeted extermination. It had been a brutal but necessary step. The Almorans had learned that only the strongest survived and that they had to decide for themselves who the strongest were. This hard lesson had shaped their people. They had grown from the challenges, adapted, and become stronger. Now, thousands of years later, the Almorans stood on the threshold of the stars. Almor looked at her offspring growing in a corner of the throne room. They were still immobile and would remain so for decades to come. But one day, they would set out and conquer new worlds. They would carry the Almorans' legacy into the universe's vastness. The Imperatrix straightened up on her throne. Her crystalline eyes sparkled with determination. Yes, she thought, it was time for expansion, time to give the Almorans new homes, tap into new resources, and extend their power. The mighty figure of the Imperatrix Almor rose from her throne. Her stone limbs moved with surprising grace as she walked towards the large map table in the hall's center. There lay a holographic representation of known space dominated by the borders of the Almoran Space Empire. Almor let her gaze glide over the flashing lights that represented individual star systems. She was particularly interested in the western edge of the map, where unexplored areas beckoned. The words of her advisors echoed in her mind, words of possibilities and resources just waiting to be explored. With a deliberate gesture, the Imperatrix touched the hologram projection. Immediately, the map zoomed in on an area beyond its current boundaries. Unknown star systems flickered tantalizingly before her eyes. "It's time," Almor murmured, her voice as rough as boulders rolling down a mountainside. "Time for the Almorans to take their rightful place among the stars." The advisors, who had kept respectfully in the background, now stepped closer. Their stone bodies reflected the bluish light of the hologram projection. They waited anxiously for their ruler's decision. Almor turned to them, her crystalline eyes sparkling with the intensity of diamonds. "Prepare the fleet," she commanded. "We will push west and open new worlds for our empire." A murmur went through the ranks of the advisors. Some nodded in agreement. Others exchanged worried glances. But no one dared to contradict the Imperatrix's decision. Almor returned to her throne, her footsteps echoing through the great hall. Sitting down, she turned her gaze to the offspring in the corner. A rare smile played across her stony features. "For them," she thought, "for the future of our people." Elena Volkov strode across the dusty ground of the construction site, her eyes sweeping over the bustling activity around her. Steel girders rose into the pale blue sky of Ceti I, a skeleton of what would soon be the planet's newest city district. The wind smelled of molten metal and freshly churned earth to her. 8 million, Elena murmured to herself, a disbelieving shake of her head accompanying her words. The colony's rapid growth since its founding still overwhelmed her. What had once begun as a daring venture had blossomed into a vibrant world, drawing people from all corners of the empire like a cosmic magnet. A dust-covered worker nodded respectfully to her as he passed. His square jaw and weather-beaten skin betrayed his origins before he opened his mouth. The harsh accent of Kosh vibrated in Elena's ears, one of countless who had ventured the arduous journey across the star ocean in recent years. With their luggage full of traditions and stories, these emigrants skillfully interwove their past with the still blank page of their new homeland. The striking silhouette of a merchant ship could be seen on the horizon, floating majestically towards the spaceport. The pulsating lifeline of the direct trade route between Eurasia and the Ceti system connected the two worlds like a cosmic umbilical cord. Elena lost herself momentarily in the thoughts of the traders who lived in the endless depths of space. They traveled from one station to the next, nomads of the stars whose home was infinity. Governor Volkov. A voice called out. Elena turned and saw Chief Engineer Yuri Petrov hurrying towards her, a data tablet in his hand. The latest projections have arrived. We're on schedule, but there are some challenges with integrating the geothermal systems. Elena nodded gravely. Show me the details, Yuri. We need to ensure this district grows and is sustainable. As they studied the plans, Elena thought of the diversity of lives that would unfold here. Families would put down roots. Children would grow up in a world their parents only knew from stories. Merchants would hawk their exotic wares in the streets, ringing tales of distant stars. And what about the water treatment? Elena asked, her brow furrowed thoughtfully. Her thoughts returned to the pressing challenges that lay ahead of them. The increased population density will stretch our existing systems to their limits. We can't afford to be careless here. Yuri scrolled through his data tablet with nimble fingers, his eyes darting over the complex diagrams and columns of figures. We have implemented innovative filtration technologies, he explained, a hint of pride in his voice. They are inspired by the highly efficient systems of merchant ships, which have to make do with minimal resources. It's fascinating how much we can learn from these space travelers who have made space their home. Elena felt the corners of her mouth twist into a slight smile. The traders, these modern nomads who skillfully navigated between the stars, brought far more than just goods. They were living, breathing messengers of progress, carrying ideas and innovations from one world to the next like precious seeds. In their ships, these flying micro-worlds, they developed solutions that now took root on the surface of Ceti Sim. The dark, excellent halls of the Gene Monastery on Kosh had a tense atmosphere. The members of the Gene Guardian Council sat around a large, oval, polished obsidian table. Candles flickered on the walls, casting twitching shadows on the serious faces of those gathered. Nadine Heimber sat enthroned at the head of the table like a gloomy goddess, her long, pale fingers drumming a nervous rhythm on the mirror-smooth surface. Her penetrating gaze swept over the other council members, whispering with lowered voices and frantically studying their data pads. The tension in the room was palpable, weighing heavily on the shoulders of those present. Brothers and sisters, Nadine's voice cut through the silence like a sharp knife. We need to talk about the Echidna faction on Ceti Sim. These renegades pose a serious threat. A collective murmur, a mixture of horror and suppressed rage entered the room. The faces of the council members hardened. Brother Thaddeus, a gray-haired man with a wrinkled forehead and tired eyes, cleared his throat. His voice trembled with barely suppressed anger. Your teachings are a perversion of our sacred doctrine. They mock everything the Helix stands for. Nadine nodded grimly, her eyes sparkling dangerously in the candlelight. I would love to have them exterminated, every last one of them. These heretics threaten not only our teachings but everything we stand for. They are like a cancer that is spreading. But the Imperial Constitution, interjected Sister Miriam, a gaunt woman with sharp features and pinched lips. Her voice was quiet, but the words echoed through the room like a thunderclap. I know, Nadine growled. She clenched her fists until her knuckles stood out white. Each colony gets to build its religion without interference from Kosh or the Helix. Brother Elias, the youngest on the council, said, can't we be more subtle? Perhaps we could send missionaries to guide the lost back to the right path? Nadine snorted contemptuously. Missionaries? Tougher measures are needed against this cancer. But which ones? Asked Sister Agatha. We can't take open action against them without breaking the Constitution. Nadine leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowed to slits. We need to get creative. Maybe. An accident? A plague? A startled gasp went around the room. Brother Thaddeus shook his head. That would be murder, Nadine. We can't. We have to. Nadine hissed. She slapped the table with the flat of her hand. Don't you see what's at stake? If their teachings spread, it could mean the end of the genetic purity we fought for so long. Silence fell over the room like a heavy cloak. The council members exchanged uncertain glances that reflected fear and doubt. Nadine took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling beneath her simple robe. With iron willpower, she forced herself to calm down, her fingers clutching the armrests of her chair. Listen, she said more softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. I understand your concerns, each one of you. But we need to act, and we need to act now before it's too late and we lose everything. Let's go through all the options, even the unorthodox ones. No stone must be left unturned. Before she could even elaborate, the massive chamber door opened with a dull creak. The Impreatrix Sevia Heimber strode in, her sumptuous robe swishing across the stone floor. Her presence instantly filled the room, and everyone else froze. Mother! Gasped the stunned Nadine Heimber, her eyes widening in surprise. What gives us the honor of your presence? Sevia Heimber's piercing blue eyes fixed on her daughter. I am here, she replied, each word like a whiplash, to remind my idiotic daughter that this is going too far to act against citizens of our people who think differently openly. The Imperatrix let her gaze wander slowly over those gathered. It was as if she was looking deep into their souls, dragging every hidden intention, every secret thought into the light. The council members avoided her gaze, lowered their heads, or stared at their hands. So be warned, I won't tolerate anything threatening my people. Sevia said before she left the Jean Monastery. On November 18, 2214, the EK Equinox hovered majestically in orbit around the 6th celestial body in the 34 Ceti system. Commander Mariana Martin stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the data displays in front of her. The ship's sensors had detected something unusual, a natural wormhole of tiny proportions hovering near the planet. Mariana felt her heart beat faster. In all her years as a researcher and commander, she had never seen anything like it. The data showed that the cosmic phenomenon was unstable and inexorably approaching collapse. This is an infrequent opportunity, Mariana murmured as she meticulously analyzed the incoming information. Her voice was calm, but the excitement in her eyes was unmistakable. Wormholes of such monumental importance and unpredictable instability are extremely rare. The bridge hummed with activity as the crew worked feverishly to capture every last detail of the phenomenon. Mariana looked over her crew, proud of their professionalism and dedication. There is the possibility of a connection to a distant place in the vastness of the universe, Mariana continued, her voice now louder and full of awe. Or even to another dimension entirely. These words gave the crew pause. The idea that they were possibly on the verge of a groundbreaking discovery electrified the atmosphere on the bridge. A lively discussion broke out among the crew members. Some were determined to explore the wormhole without delay, driven by scientific curiosity and the urge for discovery. Others expressed legitimate concerns about safety, urging caution given the phenomenon's unstable state. Mariana listened carefully, weighing every argument. As commander, she was responsible for making a decision that could potentially have far-reaching consequences. With a deep breath, Mariana turned to her crew. Her voice was calm but full of conviction. It is a narrow portal to a distant sphere, she explained, irrefutable proof that the cosmic fabric is steeped in unfathomable wonders and hidden mysteries, just waiting for us to unveil them. The words of their commander silenced the crew. An electrifying silence fell over the bridge, interrupted only by the quiet humming of the equipment. Everyone on board sensed the significance of the moment, the gravity of the decision ahead of them. The air seemed to vibrate with tension. Mariana let her gaze wander over the tense faces of her crew. In their eyes, she read a mixture of feverish excitement and deep concern triggered by the discovery of the wormhole. The atmosphere on the bridge was tense to breaking point. She knew her following words would be crucial, the mission's fate was hanging by a thread. Mariana finally broke through the heavy silence in a calm but firm voice. Launch a probe and let it fly through the wormhole, she ordered, without taking her eyes off the pulsating screen in the control center. Her fingers drummed softly on the armrest of her command chair. This could be of crucial importance. Prepare everything and monitor every last detail. Almar Kazan entered the Kost News Network's holographic studio with anticipation. The lights flickered on as he took his place before the camera. He smoothed his jacket and nodded to the production team. "Welcome to our new documentary series, Key Worlds of the Kost Sector," Almar began in a firm voice. "Over the coming weeks, we will take you on a journey through our expanding empire's most fascinating and strategically important planets." The hologram behind him switched to a detailed map of the Kost sector. Almar pointed to a pulsating dot. "Let's start with Ceti Sim, our first colony outside the home system," he continued. "Once known as Ceti II, this planet has quickly developed into a thriving outpost of our civilization." Impressive shots of NASA's city, with its floating platforms and bioluminescent buildings, alternated with panoramas of the mist-shrouded moorlands of Ceti Sim. Almar vividly described the colonists' daily struggles against the treacherous environment, pioneering discoveries, and the unwavering community spirit that drove them forward. He dwelt in particular on discovering the Marinkaran plant, whose purple flowers filled the hologram for a moment, and explained its revolutionary medicinal properties and the risks involved. He emphasized the rapidly growing economic importance of Ceti Sim, whose resource wealth has catapulted the empire into a new era of prosperity. "But our ambitions go further," Almar announced with a twinkle in his eye as the hologram switched to a barren, rust-colored world, its surface crisscrossed by vast canyons and dried-up riverbeds. "Vuondurable 4 is a promising candidate for our most ambitious terraforming project. Just imagine, in the not-too-distant future, our descendants could walk on a second Kost, a world we have wrested from the hostile cosmos with our ingenuity and perseverance. A home created by the hands and will of humanity, a testament to our ability to conquer even the most inhospitable places and make them our home." He explained the plans to transform the hostile planet, from creating an atmosphere to introducing microorganisms. The hologram switched again to a mist-shrouded world with a shimmering energy shield. "Scafo Ural," Almar announced with a hint of awe. "A planet that still presents us with many mysteries. Although it is not technically part of our sector, it fascinates our scientists with its impenetrable protective shield and the secrets that may lie beneath it." Finally, the hologram showed a system with massive space stations and patrolling warships. "And here, my fellow citizens, you see the Qtern system, our bulwark against potential threats. Once an ordinary border area, today an impregnable fortress that guarantees the security of our empire." Almar described the advanced defenses, the massive starports, and the constant presence of the Pegasus flotilla. He emphasized the system's importance as a deterrent against the expansionist desires of the Almoran space empire. "These worlds," Almar concluded, "represent not only our present but also our future. They witness our relentless pursuit of knowledge, progress, and security." In the coming episodes, we will closely examine each of these fascinating worlds and Hey, I would be happy if you could give my video a like, leave a comment and subscribe to my channel to stay up to date.